Hello and welcome YouTube to the next part of this tutorial series. Today we're going to be making a simple shop menu. It's going to be quite awesome because we can now select different spaceships and they are going to rotate around here in the shop preview. And I can also go back to the main menu, the shop menu, and select a different spaceship. And yeah, let's get into it. And as always, you can get this scene and the end scene from the links down below. So let's start by going to the menu scene and let's create a shop menu. So go to the scene view, go to the 2D scene view and zoom out a little bit and just go to the canvas and the menu container and then copy the main level, just Ctrl D or Ctrl D depending on your operating system. Now rename this to the shop menu and then, well, we want to drag it basically this way and let's play around with the numbers. So we want the -1920. And for the right, we want, what do we need? So this is 640, so this is going to be 642 right here. And now it's perfectly aligned. Awesome. Go to the title, rename this to the shop menu or just the shop. Then go to the play button and let's rename this to the menu button. And the text is going to be just menu. And for the function, so if you go to the on click event, we just want to change it to the on menu button. Click main menu right here. Awesome. Let's now create some kind of shop menu. So go to the shop menu, right here the parent, and create an empty game object. And this game object is going to be the items parent. Now add a grid layout group to the items parent. So grid layout group, like this. And also let's select the rect tool so we can kind of resize it a little bit. And okay. Now in here, let's go to the items parent and go to UI and create a button. And for the items parent, so let's play around with the grid layout group right now. For the start axis, let's select vertical so that the button gets centered. Let's now go to the button and then remove the text. Once you remove the text, just go to the button and copy it or duplicate it 8 times so that we have 9 buttons in total. Now go to the items parent and let's play around with it. So let's make the cell size a little bigger. Let's say 130 by 130 and let's make some padding. And this looks quite good. And then just drag and drop it somewhere you like. We are going to have it like, let's say something like this. It's okay. That looks decent to me. Once that is done, go to the scripts folder and create a new script. Let's call this the game manager. And also right click in the hierarchy, create an empty game object, rename this to game manager as well. And just drag and drop the game manager on here and open it up in Visual Studio. We want this to be an instance and we are going to have a don't destroy and load on here and whatnot, but let's create a instance right here for first off. So public static game manager and let's call this the instance. Then in the awake function, let's make the if instance is equal to null. Let's make it this. And what else do we need? So since I don't have any sprites for these spaceships, I want to use a different approach, some kind of like a lazy approach, I would say. So if I go to Dark Sparrows and then the prefabs, I see these icons right here. And actually in Unity, you can use these icons and set them to sprites, which is quite awesome if you're lazy as I am. So you might not notice, but this is, you can get the texture 2D of basically this icon, the preview in the assets. And then you can convert it to a sprite. So let's try and do that. So this is just going to dynamically make images and populate these buttons. First off, we obviously need a reference to these prefabs. So go to the game manager. So let's make in here a public game object array. And let's call this the spaceship prefabs. And let's also make a public texture 2D array and call this the spaceship icons or textures. Once we have this in the awake function, we have to do this in the awake function. We want the spaceship textures to be equal to a new texture to the array. We have to actually like make a array according to the size of the spaceship prefabs like this. Once we have this, we can actually cycle through the spaceship prefabs and get the texture of the preview image. So just go for int I is equal to 0 while I is less than the spaceship prefabs dot length and then ++ I, and in this loop we just want to make a game object, the prefab, just get the prefab. And let's make this equal to the spaceship prefabs on the I index. That's good. And now the texture 2D. Let's call this the texture. It's going to be equal. And here we have to actually include the using Unity editor. Like so, just the Unity editor in here. And in here, now we can actually access the asset preview. Dot get asset preview like this. And we want to get the preview of the prefab that we currently have in here. Now that we have the texture, we can actually go to the spaceship textures on the I index and just set that equal to the texture. Awesome, now the game manager knows which texture we are using. And then just go back to Unity, go to your game manager and the hierarchy and the spaceship prefabs. Let's just drag and drop the first 9 spaceship prefabs in here. Awesome, now go to your scripts folder and open up the menu manager script. And in here, let's add a public transform. This is going to be the shop button parent. And with this, we can create a new function. Let's make a private void. And let's call this the init shop buttons. Let's make a int I equal to 0, just as we did below. And then just a for each loop and for each transform. And let's call this the button. And in the, what did we call it? The transform right here, the shop buttons parent. It's awesome. Just copy and paste it down here. And let's make some brackets. And let's go for it. The int current index is equal to the I and then the I++ at the bottom. That's good. And in between here, we can just go through all these sprites. So let's create sprites, and we do that by just texture 2D, and let's get the current texture. So go to the texture, and the texture is going to be equal to the game manager.instance dot, and in here we want to get the I index of the texture. So it's called spaceship textures, and on the I index, but we don't want to use the I index because that messes up, so we just want to use the current index in here instead. Awesome. Once we get that, we can go and create a sprite. So let's make a sprite and call this the sprite or new sprite. Let's make it like this. And sprite.create, this is a function in Unity, and in here we need a texture 2D. So this texture is the new texture 2D. That's quite good. The rectangle, so let's create a new rect. So let's make just a rect and let's call this the new rect. And the rect transform, if I go to new rect like this, either we can do nothing, which we don't really want, or we can pass in the pivot point basically, and then the width and height. So the width is just going to be texture.width, and the height is just going to be texture.height. This has to be the texture, not the sprite icon or anything else. Okay. So now the rectangle is going to be the new rect, and then the last one is the pivot. So just pass in a new vector 2, and this is going to be like the 0.05 and 0.5 again. This is basically just saying that the center of the image is going to be literally in the center of the image. So if I go 0, 0, it's going to be the bottom left corner, and 1, 1, it's going to be the top right corner, which we don't really want or even care about. And now since we have the button right here, the transform, we can go to the button .get component, and we want to get the image component of the button, and then set the sprite equal to the new sprite, like so. Awesome. Now if I save all of this, and then obviously call this function in the start function like that, we should be able to dynamically instantiate and populate all these buttons. So go back to Unity, set up a couple of references. So go to the menu manager, and the shop buttons parent, just drag the items parent right here, and we can rename this to shop buttons parent. And now we still cannot really access the shop menu. It should work, but we still cannot go basically to the menu. We need a button for that in the main menu. So go to the main menu, and where we have the play button, just kind of duplicate that one, Control D, and rename this to the shop button. And let's change the pivot point and the center alignment. So go to the shop button, and then the rect transform, and click on it and shift click to the left. And if I look at the play button, the rect transform is at -100 and 100. So if I go to the shop button and set this to 100, it's going to be just the same amount from the corners as the other game button. And for the text, let's just call this the shop, like this, shop. And we also need a function for that. So go to the menu manager, open it up again, and let's create a function. Let's call this the on public void and the on shop button clicked. And in here we want to change the menu type. So let's add a new menu type. Let's call this the shop menu. And in here where we call the change menu right here on the main button clicked, we can call the same thing in here, change menu, and pass in the menu type dot shop menu, like so. Awesome. Now if I go to this function F12 and else if I want to check if the menu type is equal to the menu type dot shop menu. And what do I want to do here? Since for the map 1 menu we go to -green width and 0, 0, we are just going to copy this and paste it down here. And instead of the negative, we want just go to the screen width, which you're going to see is hopefully going to work. Now, we still need to go to the shop button and actually set up the function correctly. So just go to your shop button, and on the onClick event right here, where you search for, where you toggle the onPlay button clicked, we just want to toggle the onShop button clicked. And now if I start the game and then just go to the shop button, I can see these buttons have been created and with the images that we wanted, which is quite awesome. We don't need to do any sprites. We can just drag and drop new prefabs in here and they are gonna instantiate themselves like this and create a new sprite. Awesome. So let's now make these buttons work, and let's show a small preview of the spaceship right here that is rotating. To show a preview, we actually need some kind of reference to the current spaceship, and the best object to track the current spaceship is obviously the game manager, since this is going to be a don't destroy and load object, which is going to be able to load into all the other scenes perfectly fine without being destroyed, obviously. So let's make a public game object. Let's call this the current spaceship, and in the awake function this is going to be equal to the spaceship prefabs and 0 right here, just because we don't really have a save and load system, which we want to implement later in this tutorial series. For now, this is just going to do the work that we want. So for the current spaceships, do just this, and we don't really need these two functions right here. And what we need a public void, and let's call this the change current spaceship. And in here we want to pass in a index, so int index, and this is just going to be the index of the new spaceship. So the current spaceship is going to be equal to the spaceship prefabs, and in here we want to pass in the index like so. Awesome. So now go to the menu manager, which I have opened in here, and we actually want to create a new function. Let's call this the update spaceship preview, so a private void and update spaceship preview. And in here we also want to keep track of the current spaceship, so let's make a private game object and call this the current spaceship preview and set it equal to null, just like this. In the update preview function we want to check if the current spaceship is not equal to 0, so the preview is not equal to null, then destroy the spaceship. So that means that if we update the spaceship, we actually change the spaceship preview to a new game object. So we have to destroy the last game object. So just go to and destroy this game object. And else we want to instantiate a new game object. So call this the new spaceship. And that is going to be equal to the game manager.instance.current spaceship, like this. Since in here we keep track of the current spaceships. So here we just get a reference to the prefab. That is the new spaceship. Let's call this also the prefab. And now we want to instantiate this prefab and save it in the preview. So just copy this down, the current spaceship preview, and make that equal to the instantiate. And in here we want the current spaceship. And this is good for now. So if the update spaceship preview has to be called right here in the start function after we initialize the buttons like this. And also when we initialize the buttons, we want to add a onClick listener event. So in this function where we create the sprites, let's also create a onClick event. And if you look in the init level buttons right here, we are going to basically do the exact same thing. So we can copy this right here, these lines, and we can just change them. The button is going to be equal to the button. This is the transform get button. And we also want a onLevel select function that we pass in here. And we want a different function for this. So let's make a new function. Let's call this the private void, and let's call this the on shop button clicked, and pass in the int index like this. And also just copy and paste this function in here. So the add listener is going to have a callback function that's the onClick event and pass in the index. And in here, since we have the game manager that takes the change current spaceship right here, okay? This is a function that we call, that we can call in different scripts, and we pass in an index. And then we set the current spaceship to a new index. So let's make use of that function. So go to the game manager instance dot. I'll just call the change current spaceship and pass in the index. This is just going to pass in the index of the button, which we can loop through in here, which is going to be the same index as in the arrays. Once we change the current spaceship in the game manager, we also want to update it. So we have made a function, the update spaceship preview, And now we just want to call it down here like so. And before we start the game, I just realized that I've made a little mistake, a typo basically. Just where we in the update spaceship preview, we don't want to instantiate the same game object as we have here. Just delete that and paste in the new spaceship prefab that we want to actually instantiate. Save that, go back to Unity and start the game. If we start the game, we see our spaceship pop up here. Now, if I go to the shop menu, I can now actually click and change the spaceships, which is quite awesome. But I don't really like the display of it. I want to have it here and rotating. So let's work on that. So go to the main camera, just click on a random spaceship, and then let's try it out. Let's drag the camera X to the right. That's good. And also drag the Z. Let's make it smaller. And then also go to the X rotation of the camera. So something like 20. And then drag it up on the position.y. And I'll still drag and play around with the X. Just something to your liking, like this. Like that. And if I click on different spaceships, this is quite alright. And I might still rotate it a little bit more. And then just play around with it, just so you like what you see. And just click on all these spaceships so that all these spaceships look quite good when you instantiate them, like that. And they're in the display. Awesome. Once you have something you like, I'll just go with this probably, and then just right click on it and copy component, okay, on the main camera and the transform. Then go back to the scene view, just undo the game mode, and click on the main camera and then on the transform and paste component values. And you'll see in the preview camera right here that something will change. Okay, now if I start the game again, the camera has the new positions saved already, and now we can see the spaceship on the right, and that's quite good. And now let's make it rotate. So right here in the Star Sparrow, if I click on any different prefab, the old one gets destroyed and the new one gets instantiated. So let's click on something and then the Star Sparrow. And then if I go to the Y rotation, I want basically to rotate it this way constantly over time. It's not going to be hard, but I also want one thing. For now, if we instantiate the game object, they look basically this way, so away from us. But I want to rotate it 180 degrees so that we start, if we instantiate the game object, here we're going to see it quite well. We want to start basically the game object facing us when we instantiate it. So let's work on that. So unpause it and let's go to the menu manager script. And right here where we instantiate the game object, we can actually turn it around. So let's make a new vector 3, so vector 3, and let's call this the start rotation vector, and just make it equal to a new vector 3, and this is going to be a 0, just as we tried out, 0 float, and 180 in the Y rotation, and then 0 again. So this is just to turn it around so the spaceship faces with the nose towards the player. That's good. And now we can't really use this, but we can convert it to a quaternion. So in the instantiate function, if I want to add a parameter, this pops up in Visual Studio. And now let's loop through them. We don't really want this, and we probably want this. So the vector 3.position is just going to be a new vector 3.0, since we don't want to change the position. And the quaternion.rotation, let's make a quaternion dot Euler right here, and herein we can pass in the vector 3, so this vector, just pass in the start rotation, and this is basically just going to convert the vector to a quaternion, which is quite awesome. So this is going to take care of spawning the spaceship so the nose faces us. And let's also try and rotate it. So let's make a update function. The best way honestly would be to create a script that rotates the spaceship and put it on the spaceship once we instantiate it, but I don't want to really do that. Let's just make a simple update function in here and check if the current spaceship preview is not equal to null, so that we don't get a null reference. And if it's not equal to null, we want to rotate it. So just the current spaceship preview dot transform dot rotate, and we want to rotate it on the y-axis, so 0 float, and then time dot delta time, and 0 float again. And we probably want to play around with the rotation speed as we want to. So let's make a public float and call this the rotation speed, and set it equal to something like 10, and just pass in the rotation speed in here, and times time dot delta time. Now if I start the game, I should see my spaceship rotating around once I select it, and we already see it rotating, which is quite good. If I go to the shop menu, I see it on the right here, and if I click on this one, the spaceship will instantiate itself with the nose facing towards us, And like this, we can select different spaceships, and this is the front, don't worry about that. And yeah, like this, we have a new shopping menu, which is dynamically creating these buttons, populating those buttons on click events, and then instantiating the spaceship and rotating it. And this looks quite good, if I may say so. If you like this video, please subscribe to the channel, like the video, share it, comment down below what I should do better and could do next. And yeah, see you in the next one. Bye.